computer.
Okay, I'm muting,
Okay.
I think. Let's see if I can.
All right. I guess I will, as I was saying to Merritt, we heard from Geshe Nima. I had sent him links, resent him links to the to our classes and stuff, and so he was looking at them. And here's what he said. I won't read all of it. I'll just read, parts that are relevant to us. Thank you very much for your kind email and messages about your consistent studies of the precious Garland, imparting continued classes, discussions, and deep studies and reviews on each of the points in detail and sharing with our students. I was delighted to hear this great news and enjoyed watching the wonderful YouTube videos on the precious Garland. He was very happy with the emphasis on setting the proper motivation before class during the prayers and stuff. This got me. I was overwhelmed with joy, and my strong emotions made me almost cry. Even in these degenerate times, you all are following Nagarjuna's words, studying his authentic and pristine teaching, serving as a bright moon in the dark night, and acting like a foundational ground for the Nalanda tradition-based Tibetan Buddhist building in San Antonio, building up the Nalanda tradition in San Antonio. I pray as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may you all abide to benefit others through these marvelous teachings. I appreciate you and Nagarjuna does to see upon you and feel happy to bless your mental continuum is to manifest your Buddha nature sooner for the sake of others. So we all need to manifest our Buddha nature sooner than later for the sake of others. Please keep going. I will introduce another precious text after Precious Garland. This
should be sometime in 2020.
Yeah, we may die first. But at the rate we're going on this.
So Geshe Nima will be here for a bit. I don't know the exact dates, but also a colleague of his for sure will be in San Antonio in November for 3 weeks. Geshe Tenzin Kenkun, I believe is his
Ketsun.
Ketsun. Tenzin Geshe
Ketsun.
Ketsun. Anyway, so we'll have some monk activity coming up later this year and into the first month of next year, which is always nice. So as soon as I know the dates of both Geshe Nima and Geshe Tenzin Ketsun, I'll share those. Brian Herman, maybe we've mentioned this before, but Brian Herman has been able to leverage his position at the university in Minnesota to get Geshe Nima a teaching gig, and I think also Geshe Tenzin Ketsun. So he has, I think, a 10-year visa for making annual trips, and there's a commitment from the University of Minnesota. So it looks like at least we'll see Geshe Nima for at least some amount of time for the next number of years, and I don't know, but we look forward to meeting Geshe Tenzin Ketsun as well when he's here in November. Just a little update. Not sure exactly what they're going to be teaching. We hope to do something experiential, especially when Geshe Tenzin Ketsun is here, because they'll be here long enough to maybe we could do some kind of hybrid retreat in terms of Zoom and in person and whatever. All right,
Come on in.
That's all on that.
We have somebody who came. Hi. Welcome. You braved the rain and came, huh?
Yeah. Right on. Hey, welcome.
Yeah, you can have a seat anywhere you like. You know, you can sit here or
Yeah,
do you need something? Right here. Go this way and then take a right. And that's the little door to the right. Hi, welcome. What's your name?
Tessia.
Tetsia, I'm Christopher.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Tetsia. So I want to just finish
By
with.
the way, I have my foot up due to an injury, not because I'm lazy.
Not offensive
I am
at all.
lazy, but
This is Kobita.
Nice to meet you.
I'm
Tetsia.
also lazy, but right now.
So I wanted to finish what he said here. He says, I pray
This is
for.
the Tibetan monk who is coming in a few months.
Our teacher. He says, I pray for your success and practices, and I ask Palden Lamo and Nachun to protect you and the center for the sake of Dharma and sentient beings. Thank you once again. And he said, rejoice and all praises from the depth of my heart. Thank you. So I thought that was pretty nice to have that kind of encouragement and support, and you know that he's listening to what we're doing, and he is saying we're on the right track.
Almost to tears.
Yeah.
Of joy.
So keep it up, everybody. Bring Geshe-Niva to tears. All right, so let's start with the.
Yeah, let's see if we can do it all the way.
I don't know. I don't think so. Those moments come and go, you know. So we set our motivation with opening prayers when we're doing these studies. And what we're doing in this first opening prayer is it's taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is sort of the awakened heart and mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's a kind of a altruistic intention that's really rooted in logic, because we're all interconnected and interdependent. So it makes total sense that you would want to, become enlightened so that you could be of best help to everybody. So we can sort of fix the kind of separation and divisions we've got going on, that's quite evident to us, at least on this planet, we can see it. So that's a bodhicitta, that intention to become enlightened. And then the refuge means we're seeing that the Buddha is offering a kind of a safe direction that we can take, a safe path that we can follow, that we can trust in, that will take us step by step to this enlightened state. So what we do in this opening prayer is just imagine that the Buddha is in the space in front of you. If you want, you can look at this image. This is Shakyamuni Buddha. And so you can imagine somebody like that, sort of a golden color. And imagine that the Buddha is made of rainbow-like light. So this is not it's kind of a physical being that, your hand is going to get stopped by when you touch the body. You could put your hand right through it, just like you could with a rainbow. And this sort of represents that none of us actually have an independent, inherent self-existence. We are continually transforming. That is the nature of the way things exist. If you look at the world, you can see it's all in cycles. Things come into being, they grow, you just look at the trees, for instance. You have a seed, the seed grows into a tree, the tree develops branches and leaves, and more seeds then drop, and the tree eventually dies, but more grow. And that's the way everything is. It's in this constant transformational state. And what we need to be doing is to find out what the causes and conditions are to make those transformations be beneficial and positive. The problem is not in the fact that everything is continually transforming. The problem lies in the causes that we generate that will actually cause suffering and sort of stop kind of this wonderful interconnected nature that could be and really is. But we are it's due to we grasp at ourselves as if we exist inherently, that we have an independent self-existent me or I. So the safe direction we're taking in the Buddha is this pathway which kind of undoes that view in a very logical way that we can grasp and understand and make sense to us, so that it allows us to continue on this path and grow and blossom on this path. So we're imagining the Buddha there in the space in front of us, representing a safe direction that we can take. Then also imagine that all sentient beings from every realm of existence in the universe are surrounding you. And indeed, they really are, if you think about it. Imagine that they're all taking a human form that's capable of understanding, the teachings of the Buddha and comprehending the teachings of the Buddha. Imagine that your mother and father are respectively to your left and right. Your mother's on your left, your father's on your right. And they represent the kind of close relationship that we have had since beginningless time and countless lifetimes with every sentient being in existence. So if you think of beginningless time, it's kind of a hard concept to wrap your mind around. But that would mean that if we have had beginningless lifetimes, we have had beginningless relations with all of the sentient beings that exist. And we've had close relations similar to the ones we have with our parents. It doesn't mean those relations were good or bad. It just means that they were close. And we have that kind of connection. So think that you have this kind of connection with all the sentient beings. And you make the request to the Buddha that you be inspired to follow this path. This path that is going to lead to enlightenment for the benefit of all beings and really bring peace and joy and happiness. So we'll say this prayer. So that's what you're sort of imagining as we say this prayer. We'll say this once in English. You have the sheets there. And then we will do there's a chant, a Tibetan chant that we'll do twice. So once in English and 2 times in the Tibetan chant. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chedang sogi chognam la, jangchu bardu dakni kyab suchi, dagi jinso gi pe sonam gi, drola penchir sangye druparso. Sangye chedang sogi chognam la, Jangchu bardo dagni kiap suchi, dagi jinso gipe sonam ki, drola penchir sangye drupasho. The next prayer that is here is called the 4 Immeasurable Thoughts. And imagine now that emanating out of the heart of Buddha Shakyamuni, which we're imagining in the space in front of us, comes another Buddha, the Buddha called Chenrezig, which is the Buddha of compassion. The Chenrezig is white, like rainbow like white color. Chenrezig has 4 arms and hands. Two of the hands are like this in prayer. They're holding a jewel, a blue jewel. And then the other hands are out here. One is holding a mala, crystal mala, not a wooden mala, crystal mala, and is emanating joy to all the sentient beings who are out there. The other hand is holding an open lotus, a beautiful lotus of light. And this represents all of our ability that we all have to transform, to come out of the muck and mud of our confusion and ignorance and blossom into this beautiful enlightened being, like a beautiful lotus. So that out of our ignorance, out of our afflictive emotions, out of all of the crap that we have going through, we have the ability to rise and transform and come out of that. So this jewel that Chenrezig is holding between his hands of love, immeasurable love, and immeasurable compassion, is holding this jewel. This jewel represents our own, what they would call our nature that is capable of transforming. So this Buddha Chenrezig is holding our nature in his hands or her hands with love and compassion. You know, immeasurable love and compassion. Immeasurable love is just may you be happy. Immeasurable compassion is may you never ever suffer. You know, may we be free from that. Then this immeasurable, these beads, this mala, this is immeasurable joy that Chenrezig is sort of sending out to all of us. And this is the immeasurable joy that will never be separated from happiness. You know, and that would be the immeasurable joy of enlightenment, where you're able to achieve that. And of course, the immeasurable equanimity is represented with a hand that's holding the lotus, where the Buddha Chenrezig understands that all of us have the capability in our nature to transform into this wonderful being, this wonderful enlightened being. So think of that. Imagine that. Imagine Buddha Chenrezig is out there emanating to all of us, all sentient beings. And these four measurable thoughts are saying what Chenrezig is representing, or what Chenrezig is sending out to us. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So what will occur as we progress along this path is that we'll realize, you know, that being attached to friends and having hatred for enemies is not going to do. Because that just creates more, you know, division. So we begin to develop this equanimity, understanding that everybody, no matter who it is, no matter, you know, I know there are some people that we can't even stand to see them or hear their voice. However, we need to recognize and understand that those beings have that transformational nature within them and are capable of becoming this wonderful enlightened being. So this is what we're trying to train our minds in. Now we imagine coming again out of the heart of Shakyamuni Buddha. There's another Buddha. This is the Buddha of wisdom. This Buddha's name is Manjushri. And Manjushri appears as a very youthful, like a 16-year-old, very youthful and very awake and aware. And Manjushri represents the profound wisdom that understands the nature of reality. Manjushri is holding a sword in his right hand above his head. And that sword represents, and the sword has a blaze of light fire around it. And that sword is cutting through our delusions, our misconceptions, our misunderstanding of, we have this dualistic view of things. We have a dualistic view of self and other, subject and object. This dualistic view sort of separates us from one another. And Manjushri is saying, it's not a dualistic view. These two things can come together in a way that they completely merge, and we begin to understand the nature of self and other, the nature of subject and object, that it's occurring at the level of the mind. So Manjushri represents the ability to cut through this. At Manjushri's heart, he's holding the stem of a lotus, which sort of curves up and comes right under his left ear, and it blossoms out. And inside that lotus blossom is a sutra of the Buddhas, which is the Heart Sutra. It's all the teachings on emptiness, the nature of reality, the empty nature of self and phenomena, meaning that self and phenomena have no independent self-existence. Self and phenomena are dependently arising due to causes and conditions. Just like everything, like I was talking before, what we see in nature and plants and everything, there are causes and conditions that bring things into being, and then they shift and transform and they come back into being, and there's this cycle of going on. Well, all sentient beings, all of us, are the same way. We have the nature of our being is empty of any independent inherent existence, and it is a dependent arising. We're constantly in a state of transformation. Now that transformation occurs due to causes and conditions. The way we think, the thoughts we have, the way we then speak because of the thoughts we have, and the way we act because of the thoughts we have. And so these causes and conditions can either result in problems, and just look at the world, this is the case, we can see it. It results in problems, or we can change those causes and conditions for ourselves. And so that those causes and conditions will result in growth and benefit and happiness and joy, and we will spread that out to others as well. So this is what Manjushri represents. This wisdom, it represents that we have that capability to transform and change the nature. Well, we're not changing the nature of who we are. We're changing the direction that we take. We're changing the causes and conditions that we've been in the past. We've been creating causes and conditions that lead to further division and separation, and we're now realizing, wait a minute, we can take hold of this and change it. So that's what Manjushri is representing. Manjushri has a mantra that we're going to say. And this mantra is Om, A, Ra, Pa, Tsa, Na, Di. These are 7 syllables, and each of the syllables represents some aspect of this dependently arising empty nature that Manjushri represents. So the first syllable, Om, represents the beginningless nature of form and consciousness. You might say the universe of form and consciousness, or the universe of universes of form and consciousness, that has the capability of constant transformation. And that's what is going on. There is continual constant transformation and change occurring in all consciousnesses and all forms throughout all universes. That's the nature of that. So that's what Om is. And the Hindus very often will do a meditation on Om using the breath, and the breath sort of being a macrocosmic or a microcosmic view of the macrocosm of the universe, which is in, out, constantly moving, constantly transforming, constantly coming into existence, going out of existence, coming back into existence, and out again, and back and out. So this is the nature of not only the universe, but our own nature as well. So everything has this kind of transformational nature, continually transforming and changing. And like I said, we can generate the causes and conditions for that transformation to be destructive, or we can generate the causes and conditions for that transformation to be constructive and positive and beneficial. And this is what the Buddhist path is all about. So that's Om. The next syllable, Ah. The Ah stands for a much longer Sanskrit word, but what it represents is that the empty, dependently arising nature of self and phenomena is not created, and it's without beginning. It's not created and without beginning. The empty, dependently arising nature of self and phenomena is uncreated and without beginning. The next syllable, Ra, stands for a Sanskrit word that means the empty, dependently arising nature of self and phenomena. Let me see, make sure I got it. Yes, the empty, dependently arising nature of self and phenomena is uncorrupted and without stain. In other words, this nature that we have, this nature that exists in the universe, that has the capability of continually transforming, that process itself is not a corrupted process. That process is not a process that is stained in any way. We're the ones who are corrupting it and staining it by generating these causes and conditions based on grasping at an I and a me existing inherently and needing things. When the I and the me doesn't get what it wants, the I and the me becomes upset, and the I and the me will either get angry or attack or lash out at the thing that seems to be obstructing the I and the me from getting what it wants. We see this all the time. The I and the me also will become very attached to things that it thinks it wants and needs. And so and this is different for everybody. Everybody has different things that they're attached to that they think they want and need. And so we grasp onto those things, whatever it may be. It could be money, it could be drugs, it could be power, it could be sex, it could be anything that we're grasping onto, food, that we want and need, and we almost concretize it. Like that thing exists inherently, and I must have it. So that creates a lot of attachment. And like I said, when something gets in the way of what we want and blocks it, that then creates the anger, the jealousy, the aversion, the hatred. We sometimes turn that in on ourselves. We turn our anger in on ourselves, and that generates depression, sort of like this bottomless pit of depression. So this is that whole process. We are doing that. We are generating the causes and conditions that cause this, this, you might say, corrupted process of this transformation, because we don't understand, we don't recognize the nature of who we are, what we are, how everything exists. Remember Manjushri, he's saying we have this beginningless nature that can transform. It just takes the causes and conditions to do it. So this process of transformation is not corrupted, and it's not stainless. The next syllable is pa, and that means the empty nature, empty dependently arising nature of self and phenomena is the ultimate reality. That is what the nature of reality is. That all phenomena and ourselves are empty of any kind of independent self-existence. We are dependently arising. The next syllable, sa, is that the empty nature, empty dependently arising nature of self and phenomena does not die, and it is not reborn. So if we just say, look at the process of a plant, say a tree. You have the seed is in the ground. The seed came from a tree. The tree will eventually,
we move it all the time.
The tree will eventually go through its growth process, drops the seeds, drops the leaves. Then the seeds are in the ground. They go through this gestation process and then emerge again. So we're the same way. We're the same way. We're not, when we die, it's not like everything is over. When we die, we just go into a process similar to like when a seed goes under the ground and is gestating. And then it takes the right causes and conditions, and that seed will then generate into another tree. The same goes for us. We will take another kind of rebirth based on the causes and conditions we have generated ourselves. So this process, Sa is saying, the empty, dependently arising nature of self and phenomena does not die, and it's not reborn. It just always is. It's happening all the time. So this intermediate state is not a state of death that we go through. It is a state where we are transforming again and going into the next life that we're going to have. And then the final, the next syllable is na. And na means that the names that we give to self and phenomena, Kavita, Tesla, Christopher, what is your name?
Zeo.
Spell that?
Zeo.
C-O-Z-O?
Z-E-O.
Zeo, okay, Zeo. So the names that we're giving to one another, and so that we give to, glasses, light, the names given to self and phenomena are mere labels. They're just mere labels. They're nothing more than labels. The empty, dependently arising nature behind the names and labels, it cannot be gained or lost. So the nature of who we are and the nature of everything cannot be gained or lost. It just is. It's not going to go away, and it's not going to be something that we can, that we can get. We have it already. We have it already. A lot of what the Buddhist process is breaking down the wrong conceptions we have, so that we're able to clearly see what actually is going on. So that's what na is. The names given to self and phenomena are mere labels, and the empty, dependently arising nature behind all the names and labels can neither be gained nor lost. Then the final syllable is di. And di comes from the Sanskrit root bud, which in an English transliteration is B-U-D-H. And this is the root of the word Buddha. It's the root of which a Buddha is the external expression of an enlightened being. And there's the Buddha, an external expression of an enlightened being. Then it's also the root of the word bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is a awakening being. Bud sort of means awake, awaken, wake up. So a bodhisattva, sattva means being. A bodhisattva is an awakening being. So those of us who are on this path, the path of Buddhism, to become enlightened for the benefit of all beings, are on this bodhisattva path. Then there's another way that Buddha is that Buddha expresses in a form, and that's buddhi, which is dhi. So this is the internal expression of the Buddha. Buddha is the external expression. Buddhi is the internal expression, which refers to the mind, the consciousness of the Buddha. So at the end of this mantra, we're saying D, and we repeat the mantra on the we repeat the D on the last repetition of the mantra many, many times, and we focus that D inward into our heart chakra area. This is where they say that our consciousness, our eternal, our never-ending consciousness abides in a very, very small energetic drop here. And so that we're sending this idea that we're awakening, remember, Buddha means awake, we're awakening our internal consciousness, you know, so we're trying to awaken this enlightened mind. So the whole mantra is Om Ra Pa Sa Na Di. I know this is a detailed explanation, but folks, I'm going to say it every time because I want this mantra not to just be a meaningless series of syllables. I know that we can't yet grasp all of that as we're saying this mantra, but eventually we will. The more we become familiar with what each of these syllables is standing for, we will grasp the meaning of this mantra, and it will have a profound effect on us. So this is why I'm continuing to go over it. I know it seems very laborious, but that's why I'm doing it. So we're going to, say this mantra a few times. Om Ra Pa Sa Na Di. And at the final repetition, we'll repeat the D over and over again. And when we do that, when we're going D, 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 think that you're focusing that energy inward so that you're opening up your mind. You're awakening your mind. You're awakening your consciousness to reality, really. Okay, here we go. Om Ra Pa Sa Na Di, 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 Om Ra Pa Sa Na Di. Rapatsana di Oma 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 Rapatsana di Patsana di Oma Rapatsana di Oma Rapatsana di Oma Rapatsana di Oma Rapatsana di Apatsana di Oma Rapatsana di 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 di. Yeah, I like the percussion drum. I love it.
We've been on a bossa nova kick.
Oh my God.
Oh, nice.
Oh, do you know who Emilio Santiago is?
I've heard the name.
Brazilian.
He's a Brazilian guy.
Oh, wow.
I don't know, I've literally been on a.
Oh, and the band behind him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so tasty. Everybody has their space. They know exactly what to play and what not to play. So everybody, the whole mix of the ensemble and the guy singing, It's great. It's really, really great. On YouTube, Emilio Santiago. Yeah.
We might have to watch it as part of this class.
Well, yeah, we do have things it's not required viewing, but we do talk about things we can watch. Okay, so we'll end the prayers there because that was long enough. Is Brian Herman here?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
This is for you, Brian.
Brian, this one's for you. Last week, Brian Herman asked a question, and it was a very, very, very good question. Brian, your questions are really, really good, and they
Keep them coming.
keep them coming because they're very important, because they're questions that we all have, and we need to think about them, and we need to come to some kind of satisfactory conclusion or answer to the question. So Brian's question was,
Christopher thinks he's come up with a satisfactory.
well, just like I came up with a satisfactory answer for me in terms of beginningless time, this works for me, so I'm hoping it will work for all of you all. Brian's question was, if everything is in a constant state of transformation, and it's beginningless and endless,
Impermanent.
and impermanent meaning it's constantly changing, constantly transforming. His question was, why haven't the Buddha's teachings changed? Shouldn't the Buddha's teachings change if everything is constantly transforming and changing? And my initial response to Brian was sort of on the track of what my answer or my conclusion to that question is. And it has to do with what are called the three spheres. I know, Brian, if you listen to the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva regularly, and some of those practices talk about the three spheres. And the three spheres have to do with what is called agent, object, and action. So agent would be us. Agent is like the subjective consciousness. Agent would be the subject, you could say. Object is what the object that the subjective consciousness is aware of. So for instance, for you, you'd be the agent and I'd be the object. For me, I'd be the agent and you're the object, and for everything like that. So for each one of us, our consciousness is subjective. We are all, it's always going to be that way. Our own personal consciousness is never objective. It is a subjective thing that is aware of objects that appear to be, and this is very important, appear to be outside of our mind, outside of our subjective consciousness. So that's the agent, that's the object. Now the action is this interaction that takes place between the agent and the object. So there's agent, object, and then there is an action or an activity or a communication of some kind that is going on between those two. So say you look at any object, you're looking at these, right? And you see this object, and right away you project onto this a whole bunch of different things that are in your mind, So you see that you go, oh, well, these are beads. And these beads, they appear to be made out of wood, and then there's some plastic things, and there's some thread on there. And these beads are used, Christopher is using these beads as what is called a mala, to count prayers. So these are a special kind of beads. So there's this whole process that goes on in our mind when we make contact with an object. We immediately will project onto whatever object comes to our awareness, whether it's through sight, sound, smell, taste, or touch. We will project all kinds of things onto that object and give it the meaning that it has for us. For somebody else, they would just go, what are these beads? And they would just think they're beads for, jewelry or some kind. Okay, so we get to this idea of the Buddha's teachings being part part of the whole transformational process of the universe. Therefore, the Buddhist teachings should change. And I want to talk about the subjective consciousness as it is exposed to the Buddhist teachings. Agent, the object, and the action that takes place between the agent and the object, between us and the Buddhist teachings as they appear to us and come into our consciousness, our subjective consciousness. And there were two examples that happened to me this week, and one of them also Kavita was awake for it. And this occurred when we were watching, before we went to bed at night, we were watching on the computer, on YouTube. We were watching, first of all, there was a movie that I've seen many, many times. It's got to be at least 11 to 15 times in my life that I've seen this movie. It's called Roman Holiday. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's from the early 50s. It was like the first movie Audrey Hepburn was in. She won Best Actress for it. Gregory Peck was in it. It was about this, princess who is traveling around, Europe on a diplomatic mission for her country, and she's in Rome, and she's just sick of it. She's just really young. She's like 20 years old, and she doesn't want to do this anymore. And she escapes and goes on this little holiday, and she meets up with this guy who's a reporter, and it's a very, very good story. So I'm watching this movie. I've seen it many, many times, but this time when I watched it, because I have changed, the movie, it was like watching it for the first time, because I was so appreciating, number one, the story, the writing of the story. Number two, the acting, the quality of the actors. They were so natural. They were so good in it. And there were three of them: Gregory Peck, Audrey Hepburn, and the guy who used to be on Green Acres, Eddie Albert. They were all terrific in it. And it was as if I was seeing so many things for the first time, even though I've seen this, like I said, maybe 11 or 15 times. So the reason, it's not like the movie changed. It's not like the movie changed.
The movie didn't change.
The movie didn't change. It's the same movie.
But object, so in this case,
the object is the same. The movie didn't change. The Buddhist teachings didn't change. However, the agent changed. Me, I have changed. Something occurred, some maturation processes occurred in me where I was seeing this in a completely new way. So the action that was taking place between the agent and the object, between me and the movie Roman Holiday, as I am experiencing that, it's like I'm experiencing it for the first time in a whole new way that's very refreshing, and I'm appreciating it so much more than I ever did. Here's the second example, and Kavita was...
I just want to point out that what you're pointing out here is that
the movie didn't change.
The way the object exists is independent on your observing the object.
Right, just like I said.
As such, the object has changed because you have changed.
Just like I said, when we look at these,
define.
as we define what these are, they either become holy prayer beads or they just become a necklace. It depends on how we are viewing it.
I mean, right? I just, again, the reason this is so profound is everything you see with your vision.
Or hear with your ears.
Everything that comes to your consciousness appears as it does independence on your consciousness, right, including the Buddhist teachings. Exactly.
Exactly. This is what I was first saying to Brian when you asked this question last week. I was trying to express this, but I didn't put it in the context of the three spheres, which is the correct context to put this question into. So the second example that occurred, we were again another night on YouTube, and we're always looking for something that's not dark, and because there's so much dark stuff. I mean, you go to Netflix or Amazon or whatever, Prime, and it's like, damn, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to. So it's like it's about war, or it's about weird shit, or it's like just all this stuff. So we were looking. All right, let's listen to music. When Kavita and I both love, we always have, Latin, Brazilian jazz. So this is what you think of it. Sort of in the early '60s, this bossa nova movement came out. And that jazz has one of the great composers of that was Antonio Carlos Jobim from Brazil.
Okay, there's a song
And there's just, all right, go ahead, go
In
ahead.
the 70s, that we liked in the 70s, and it was this husband and wife team in the Boston area that recorded it. It's called a song called Ginji, D-I-N-D-I.
That's for, you know, Ginji.
Yeah,
Brazil.
and so I don't know. I somehow or another I ran across them and heard the song, and I thought, surely, I'm just gonna say this, as Christopher and I are both Caucasian lounge singers, this cover of Gingy was by two Caucasian Boston area lounge singers. I thought, surely there must be some.
It was a little, you know, like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was all fine and good, but.
And it was good. I mean, you could tell it's a really good song.
I started looking for a better cover of Gingy.
And
the song.
Kavita found this guy from Brazil, Emilio Santiago. And he, oh God.
It was like the Gingy I had always been looking for.
Yeah, it was like, it was the Gingy of your dreams. Because not only was this guy, he's got this great, very expressive personality, and it's a wonderful, very positive. And he's got a lot of nuance and rhythm, and I mean he's really, really good. And his voice, he's got a deep, you know, a deep bass, but he can go way up, you know, like and he uses it really well. And then the band that he's surrounded by, the musicians are so fine. They're like at the top of their form, each one of them, and each aspect of what every musician is doing is perfectly interdependently working with every other aspect of every other musician. So the grooves, the rhythms, the chord changes, the improvisations, the horn parts, everything is just perfectly balanced and working in this beautiful interdependent thing that, you know, blossoms into this amazing performance of Gingy. And it was like the Gingy that we always knew was out there, that always existed. Well, now, it's the same song.
Antonio Carlos Jobim's song Gingy hasn't changed.
That song hasn't changed, just like the Buddhist teachings.
Now, back in the 70s, we had Jackie and Roy.
Jackie and Roy. Man, they're very, I mean, Jackie and Roy were really good, but they just didn't have the same, well, they didn't have it. I mean, the same, the groove, you know?
They had a pretty good groove.
They had a good groove, but it just wasn't what this was. Because this was a whole ensemble, and the presence of the guy, the singer,
and everybody.
I mean, it just was awesome. Kavita posted it on FaceTime if anybody wants to check it out. Facebook, yeah, Facebook. All right, so the point is, the Jobim song Gingy has not changed, just like the Buddha's teachings have not changed. However, and this is more to the point of how we receive and learn Buddha's teachings. However, the transmitter of Jobim's song Gingy, that was new. That was a whole new group who understood what the song was, understood the potential of the song, understood what could be brought out of that, and they conveyed it. And Kavita and I, because we were in where our minds are like attuned to that, it just hit us like, wow, I've heard Gingy in a way I've never heard it. This is so amazing. I've had to listen to it over and over and over again. And
I just want to also add, theoretically, there's increasingly more perfect expressions of Gingy to be experienced.
Right.
So a bodhisattva, for example, to say a Buddha would experience an even more blissful Gingy.
Right. So where I'm going with this,
again, this essential point here is that the object, you have this agent, that's you,
the subjective,
the object, the thing that's being apprehended, and then the action of the apprehension. So the object exists, the way in which the object exists is totally independent on the agent apprehending the object. The object does not exist in any particular way from its own side in any particular way that's set. It's always in dependence on the apprehending consciousness.
Absolutely. So the Buddhist teachings don't exist in a vacuum. The Buddhist teachings don't exist frozen in a bubble. They're not that way at all. The Buddhist teachings are alive, and the way they come alive is through how it is expressed by the lineage, the teachers who take the Buddhist teachings from teacher to student, teacher to student, teacher to student, all the way down to, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and our teachers, then to us. That is it's a living thing. And that expression of the Buddhist teachings comes alive when our own consciousness, at whatever state it's at, can grasp the meaning of those teachings. So that's how those teachings are.
So
you would
could
say
in the sense,
in that sense, they
no, in
a very true
very
sense.
real way.
They are impermanent, but as Brian was saying, I don't get it because, but we're saying, the Buddhist teachings, how could the Buddhist teachings change? Like I said, remember, the Buddhist teachings don't exist in a vacuum. It has to be part of this agent, object, and action experience, which is always different for each one of us. Each one of us is the agent, is the subjective consciousness. And it's like with the movie Roman Holiday. I had matured to a point, my consciousness had changed so that I experienced that movie in a completely new way where I appreciated it so much more and got so much more out of it. That had to do with me. It didn't have to do with Roman Holiday, which certainly hadn't changed, at all. So does this make any more sense?
Well, I think it gets us in the neighborhood, but
Supporting commentary.
Yeah.
It has been said that Buddha is quite the taskmaster, and using that metaphor, his teachings then become akin to guideposts or even tools. Thus, they do not exist externally as fixed truth ideas. They are, I don't want to simply say like a boat, a way of navigation. They're more particularly kind of described as like, when one reaches this, when one is here, when one is capable of the awareness there about this, upon this. And so this, as some describe it as ascending kind of spiral, imagery is quite useful to understand the teachings through the lens of. When we were discussing like the Roman Holiday and Emilio Santiago's performance, another easier, kind of more tangible metaphor is like spring cleaning in like American spaces where all of the objects that we had once valued at some point in time got stored in a garage or a shed or a room we don't enter.
We're doing that right now.
And Marie Kondo exploded in the last like 7 years, and her process is very much, let me go and touch these objects. What are they to me now? As a sentient being with a conscious mind, when I go to touch the same t-shirt or this dress I have not worn in 2 years, 5 years, 3 months, ever, right?
Ever.
Right? Is it still something that had the allure, the value, the interest of when I purchased it, or when I imagined what it would be like to wear this and who I might be and what I might do? And then like that questioning, the practice of let me go and touching the object, becomes a really good metaphor for my consciousness. I'm watching it change now. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. The truth of the shirt or the dress was something that, regardless of whatever it was, the mind ascribed to it.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. Exactly. This is what we're saying. So
thank you.
Does that make any sense to you, Brian Herman?
Now.
Well, I have to think a little bit more about it, Christopher, and I certainly appreciate the effort you've put into continually trying to address my questions. Let me say, just off the top of my head, after hearing what you're saying, what the others have said, including Kovita, I think the way I think about it from what you've just said is, you have a subject and an object and a communication between the subject and object. And what is changing really is how the subject, which is you, interprets the object, whether it's because you gain more information, you gain more clarity, you gain more understanding. So you, in some sense, change your understanding, your knowledge base, your even comfort, feeling, attachment, whatever you want to say, with that object. But as you've described this, you've repeatedly say, well, the object doesn't have to change. What changes is your interpretation of what that object represents to you. At one point in your life, if we say that you have that we're all working towards emptiness, and emptiness is no independent existence, and we will somehow at some point achieve some realization of emptiness. The emptiness has always been that lack of independent existence. We just don't sense that. And as we go through our practice, we apparently get more and more capable of getting closer and closer to sensing that. So it still sounds to me, and it still strikes me, that emptiness, as this example, is a constant. It's just our understanding and our capability to engage in that concept changes, but the concept is still that constant. So the teachings of Buddha, whether they're absolute teachings, they're guideposts, they're roadmaps, however you want to do it, still kind of is supposed to get us to this place where this is what we've been told since Buddha's time is where we're supposed to evolve to. And we're all working towards evolving to that. So the evolution of us changes, but the absolute place that we're trying to get to from strikes me still as being the same, whether it's enlightenment, whether it's emptiness, whether it's bodhicitta, et cetera. So I'm still kind of struggling with this concept that even Buddhist teachings continue to change.
Zeo wants to respond to that.
Okay.
Hi. So my response may seem like it comes out of nowhere, but I do think it may be of some value to you. So if it is, beautiful. If it's not, like the Buddha says, throw it in the trash. What I hear, the very minor philosophical contradiction I think you are like looking at, where it does not seem to connect or necessarily fit, like lock and key to some degree, is like I hear it existing almost temporally, as in, well, what then is the truth if my consciousness is able to pick up on things that are not true? How do I know that the goal of emptiness, as I am through this practice and through these meditations and through this, we could call it faith, moving toward, how does one ascertain that the emptiness they thought they had or are moving toward is in fact that emptiness? And the ironic issue is where the floor drops open, because there is not a truth to be able to ascertain that. This is a bit more esoteric in Buddhist philosophy as I've understood it, but how can one come to know truth? As though it were always the case, when one's mind is not ready to accept the conditions that make that so, which is the truth is as you experience it, and you cannot get past that until you are past that. And so to try to peer forward with the mind, to try to understand with great philosophical or logical probing, will always, if you've ever played like a sandbox style video game, you hit a wall in the world where you cannot go any further. And that is the expanse of the mind. And it is until you have the experience that broadens even that world that you will then be able to have like what we might call deeper clarity or more pure awareness or a form of awakening. And so like the metaphor then about talking about, for instance, the clothing or the song becomes a matter of you are where you are now. How do you know where you are? Because you still see this as this, right? The shirt is still the shirt.
That is so profound.
The shirt is still the shirt, but also what I see it is no longer is a way I'd like to style myself for date night. Does that make sense? The shirt is a shirt, but it is something I find ugly in my closet, I throw away. Right? If we are moving toward emptiness, how do we know that the emptiness that we conceive of is the true emptiness? We don't. You cannot. But one day you will. And when that occurs to you and how that occurs to you is a lot of people have been trying to figure that out for a long time. But it happens on the timeline it happens. And the mind transforms as it does. Does this make sense to you so far? Am I kind of...
Well, let me interrupt. Sorry. I mean, because I think about it differently.
Okay.
And maybe it's because it's, you know, my experience, just my general experience in life. And because I'm always, and you don't know this, but a colleague and I wrote a book on trust a couple of years ago. So, and truth. So, you know, and I've seen many people who believe their truth is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And their mind is completely committed and convinced that that truth is the truth, independent of the existence of any factual support that that is a truth that is correct. So yes, and even when, you know, we talk about having a realization of emptiness or of enlightenment, and the goal is we continue to do this practice, and we continue to think, we continue to debate, we continue to evolve. And as you said, even if you get to that point, how do you know that that is actually the ultimate truth? That is maybe Buddha's truth, and it makes sense to you as the most logical truth, and so you adopt that as the truth, but it's just the same as ultimate reality. I mean, you know, this idea of ultimate reality, which is completely different from conventional reality, you know, where nothing is independent in its existence. So I think it's a dangerous, and I shouldn't say dangerous, that's right. I think it's a challenging situation to try to decide when your mind has gotten to the point where you have accepted and you believe now you have experienced emptiness, because you may continually through this process change your mind in a way that may not be correct. I mean, we may never know, but I'm just saying that because I say that this is my truth and therefore it's my truth and that is the truth, somebody else may say, well, that's not my truth. I mean, you know, so I don't have the same belief, or I don't have the same idea, or not the same understanding. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not trying to, I believe very strongly in Buddhist philosophy, and I think it's a good philosophy, and I can get behind dependent origination and cause and effect and cause, which I think is something that you also have been kind of talking a little bit here. And maybe we've talked about this before. Maybe we don't have the correct English words and terminology to describe some of these concepts that we're talking about. But I'm a little more unsure for myself, even, you know, if I know what the truth is, or what I think the truth is versus what factually might be the truth. Does that make sense?
Oh, there's a lot in this. There's a lot.
Oh yeah, there's a lot in there. But you know, I just want to point out one little side note that is worth mentioning in this particular context of the discussion about your particular question about impermanence. In just the same way that we are agreeing that we have ever more profound understandings of emptiness until theoretical total merging direct realization. I'm going to say that we don't really know what we're saying when we talk about the mode of existence called impermanence. We use the word as if we know what it is. And I think so, therefore, in some way, I would say, when you struggle with the question about what is impermanence, you're assuming that you have a direct realization of the reality of what impermanence is. And so I think that is something also that has to be contemplated, because we think we know what impermanence is, and I'm here to say, I don't think we do.
Okay. I don't know how else to phrase this. This is just monotheism. And part of the reason I point out monotheism is that it has baked inside of its philosophy the presumption that there is a singular truth that is ultimate. Inside of it also, it discusses a need for it to be the ultimate reality, and thus supremacy shows up, like the value of supremacy shows up. How then do we know that we are right or correct, or in the appropriate awareness, so to speak? Well, truthfully, Buddhism, especially as Buddha has discussed it, like, it's more of a mystical philosophy. This is one of the journey. This is not one of the certainty. Because as soon as we are certain, well, we've made the error where we have believed the illusion was so. And this is why the only way to discuss this contradiction becomes about monotheism. Because if we call truth singular, or even anything at all things must align to its one perspective. But if there is not only one perspective, but infinite, and if there's maybe even not even infinite perspective, but zero perspectives, all things fall apart. Because again, how do we know the truth is truth? But the first question that should be asked before that one is, what even is that? How would we even begin to measure what truth is true without constructing false dualism, right? Where we separate all things out as though they were not interconnected, as though they do not arise, as Alan Watts says, mutualistically and simultaneously, right? It is because we cannot know, it is because we do not know, that even the question or the attempt at ascertaining that becomes something we must do away with. Because if there is something to find, if there is a truth to know and to come into the awareness of, how can attempting to determine your mind's current understanding as that fact be useful in the journey, mystically and spiritually, toward finding the thing that you do not already know, that you have yet to experience? Does that make sense?
Well,
that was a lot. That was a lot, but
yeah. Let me. How can I think, first of all, let me say, Christopher, I don't know what your teaching is supposed to be today, but I don't want to distract you.
Well, we'll move quickly off of this and then onto the meditation on emptiness.
But so, Zeus, is that you? I can't remember your name. Zio. So, are you just visiting this weekend?
First time here.
First
Are you
time,
from this?
he said,
Are you?
yeah, apparently, we don't know, and it's, why do you ask?
Well, I think we should have I think it'd be interesting to have a longer discussion, maybe, not during the class time, but let me ask you this specific question. So, let's say that you had some medical issue. I don't know. Let's say diabetes, for example, and you said, okay, I have diabetes, and we know factually that there is a particular intervention that will, maybe not cure diabetes, although that may be possible someday, but certainly slow the significant progression of that disease. And you come to us and you say, well, how do I know that that is true? Well, we know it's true because we have 100 million people who have had diabetes and have had this particular treatment. And we know that out of those 100 million people, 99.9% of them have, significantly better blood sugar control and significantly better health, longer life, all the less, consequences of it. That is kind of what I would say is an accepted fact or an accepted truth. And we also know that if you don't follow that truth or facts, then you will, not do well. You will have other problems. You will have a short life, etc. So, there are some established facts. Buddhist, I think the way I understand it is that Buddha has said, look, here are my teachings. I'm not telling you to believe them or not believe them. I'm telling you to think about them, think about whether they make sense to you or not, and use logic to figure out whether or not this truth or this idea or this path makes sense to you. And if it makes sense to you, then you can continue to think about this path. I think some of the things you're raising are a bit of I would say, are correct because if something hasn't happened, how can you predict that it will happen? If you haven't experienced it, how do you know what the experience is? So I don't disagree with those particular thoughts, and it may be one day I will get to a point where, maybe in another lifetime, where I will have this realization of emptiness or enlightenment. And all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to follow the logic of Buddha's teachings, but then sometimes I see a bit of an inconsistency in the logic of the teachings, and I'm trying to understand that inconsistency that I see. I'm not saying other people see it, or other people may understand it better than I do. So that's why I keep asking these questions that seem to be taking up an awful lot of time.
We're going to have to move on, but Brian, your questions are good. Don't worry about taking up time. I just want to leave before
I can't hear very well.
Oh, I was just saying, I appreciate the space to let me talk.
No, it's fine.
This is what we do.
It's all important.
This is what we do. I just gonna add one quick thing, which is, there's a tendency to want to lock things down, concretize and put a framework and logically understand. In a way, you could say that the experience, a direct realization is going to be way past logic. So yeah. I would not say that it's done by logic. The path is not something that you logic out ultimately. Ultimately, it's an experience.
Logic is helpful and logic is required.
It gets you there, but the experience is the point.
What I want to leave us with on this particular subject is to remember that all we have is our subjective consciousness. That's what we have to work with. The Buddhist teachings, the movie Roman Holiday, the song Jinji do not exist in a vacuum. They do not exist. They're not self-existent. They have to be experienced, and they are experienced in a different way by different consciousnesses, depending on where that consciousness is at. So I just want to leave us with that and think about the three spheres, because it's a very important, really important concept or topic or idea to become familiar with, and recognize that what we have is our subjective consciousness. And that's the thing that we actually can change through causes and conditions, and we can grow our wisdom. This is why the Buddha gave these initial practices of, say, like the 7-limb practice, or transforming our karma, or the preparatory practices of the refuge visualization. These all develop our what's called positive potential, or merit, or sonam. And we have to develop that positive potential in order for us to be able to even open up our subjective consciousness to these teachings. It won't happen if we don't do these practices, which grow our merit and grow our wisdom. So we have to engage in these practices and then keep going. Don't give up. So I think that's where I want to leave it, because if we're going to get to this, we have about, I don't know, 15 maybe minutes left. So I want to do this emptiness meditation. You recall last time we did a meditation on using the car. and seeing if
not anywhere.
the car
He doesn't,
exists.
it's not written down.
This ain't written down.
No.
It's not written down yet. It'll be in the study guide. That's next time with the video. Just as the car is nothing but, remember I said names, or I should say the Buddha said, names are merely labels. The car was merely a label for all of the parts. The parts of the car were merely labels for the parts that made up the parts. And those parts that made up the parts were merely labels, and it just kept going that way. So there was no inherently existing car at all. So that was a meditation on what's called the selflessness of phenomena. Now we're going to take that same kind of meditation, but transfer it to the I, to the me. So this is now a meditation on the selflessness of the person, the I, or the me. Okay. Okay. How to meditate. Here we go. Now this I'm going to be reading. How to meditate on the emptiness of the I using 4 essential points. And we used these 4 essential points last time when we meditated on the emptiness of the car. And don't think that this is the only time you're going to meditate on this. This is just we're getting introduced to this, and we need to go over this many times in order to have some kind of understanding develop. One method to realize that the I doesn't truly exist, that it is empty of inherent independent self-existence, is to meditate on 4 essential points that examine the relationship of the I and the collection of aggregates that together produce an individual. We begin by identifying what is called the object of negation. This is the thing that is to be negated, which in this case is the I, as it appears to our innate I-grasping or ego self-grasping mind. So here's the first point, ascertaining the object of negation. The following is a method that His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and actually all of our Dharma teachers, have taught for identifying the way that this false I or me appears. So take a minute now to think about a particularly bad or good situation you have experienced that elicited very strong emotion in you. This would be some situation in which an extremely heightened awareness of I suddenly and instinctively arose in you. If it is comfortable for you to do this, imagine reliving the experience of this situation in your mind. At that time, the false I, the I that seems to truly exist independently, appeared. This I appeared to your innate grasping as if it had its own nature. It seemed to be self-existent, able to stand alone as an entity. I. We have to practice looking at this kind of I skillfully and immediately. Otherwise, we won't ascertain the way it appears. The appearance of this I is subtle, and it will quickly and easily become mixed with the appearance of the shape of our body or the appearance of the collection of our aggregates that make up the body or make up our being. But this is not the appearance of the subtle object of negation that we're targeting here, which is an inherent, independently existing I or person. In this meditation, we are not negating physical form, feelings, the ability to discriminate, the factors that form habits and propensities, or the sense consciousnesses and mental consciousness. Here, in this meditation, the object of negation is an I or me or person that seems to have its own essential nature and personal identity, that seems to be self-existent and able to stand alone as an objective entity, me. The I appears to the innate ego self-grasping or I-grasping as if it had its own nature and yet was mixed in with the body and mind. The I seems able to stand alone as an objective entity, but this only happens for a very short moment before it appears mixed with something else. When we are either very angry and upset or very happy and elated, the appearance of an inherently self-existent I is clearer, making it easier to identify as the object of negation. To simply know that the inherent self-existence of the I or person is the object to be negated isn't sufficient to clearly recognize it. It's not enough to just know that. We may be able to explain what the object of negation is to others, but our understanding is only at the level of words. What we have to do is understand this more deeply for ourselves at the level of experience through meditation. When we have discovered with certainty the appearance of just the I or person itself appearing self-existent, without the appearance of the body or the collection of the aggregates, then we have understood the first of the four essential points in the meditation on emptiness, which is called ascertaining the object of negation. Now, of course, I'm not saying right now we will have ascertained this, but this is the process. And this needs to be gone over and over and over again until it becomes very clear. Like I said, if you take a minute to think of, some situation where, all of a sudden you were very elated because, you were, perhaps it was like, who knows, a surprise birthday party, and you were really happy about it. Not some people don't like surprise birthday parties, but you really like this. Or you were honored in some big ceremony, and you were the center of attention, and it was a wonderful thing. For a moment, that I would arise as being this self-existent thing. The other thing that works just as well is to take a very, very disturbing situation in your life, a moment where something happened where, it was very, very bad, and the I was very, very exposed. And that feeling that you had, all of a sudden, it's just this bare, naked I has been exposed. So that we have to sort of practice this and be able to sort of access that particular sense before it gets mixed in with the body and gets mixed in with all of our other aggregates. But that's the first step in this meditation, is ascertaining the object of negation. Here's the second. This is called ascertaining the pervasion. Now, while still holding the appearance of the self-existent I, a corner of your mind decides if the I or person exists independently as it appears to, then it must either be one with the aggregates, that is, identical to them, or it must be different from the aggregates, totally separate from them. There is no other possibility. Only these two choices are possible if something truly exists inherently, because an inherent, independently self-existing thing cannot depend on any other factors. That right there is logic. And that kind of logic is needed in order to go forward with this and have this meditation be successful. If the I or person exists inherently and independently of everything else, it would either have to completely pervade and permeate all of the aggregates, or it would have to be something entirely different and not pervade the aggregates at all. This means that either the I is one and the same thing as the physical form, the feelings, the faculty of discrimination, the factors that form habits and propensities, the sense consciousnesses and the mental consciousness, or the I is something completely apart and separate from those. When your mind is clear about this point, you have understood the second essential point, which is called ascertaining the pervasion. Does the I pervade all of the aggregates, or does it not? Now we go to the third point. Ascertaining if the I is one and the same as the aggregates. Next, while still holding the appearance of the inherently self-existent I, a corner of your mind investigates whether the I exists inherently as it appears or not. Start by examining if the I is one and the same as the 5 aggregates. Take the aggregate of form, which refers to material form. In this particular instance, it refers to the physical body. The human body is made up of many different yet interconnected and functioning components, just like the car was. Brain, skin, ears, limbs, hair, lungs, internal organs, skeletal structure, muscles, fluids, blood, digestive system, and so on. All of these components are themselves made up of many other parts and components. Those other parts and components are made up of even more parts and components, all the way down to the level of cells, atoms, and subatomic particles of energy. The human body itself is the physical substance of the human organism. It is not independently self-existent, but comes into existence and maintains its existence through many interdependent causes and conditions. In addition, the human body plays a key interdependent role in the continuous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between plants and animals that is essential for life on planet Earth. An independently self-existing I cannot, therefore, be one and the same as the interdependently existing form aggregate of the physical body. Another aggregate is feeling. Sometimes it's also called sensation. This refers to physical and mental feelings and sensations that are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These feelings are experienced through the contact of the 5 sense faculties with their corresponding objects: the eye with visible form, the ear with sound, nose with odor, tongue with taste, body with tangible things, and mind with ideas and thoughts. The 5 sense faculties belong to the aggregate of form. They are very subtle, clear, internal sense organs that are extremely translucent like light. They are supported by their corresponding physical sense organs. The subtle sense faculties have the capacity to process the information taken in by the physical sense organs, and as a result, sensory awareness or consciousness is generated. Because the aggregate of feeling functions interdependently with the aggregates of form and consciousness, it is not independently self-existent. The aggregate of feeling also functions interdependently with the aggregates of discrimination and mental formations, sometimes called conditioning. In connection with the aggregate of discrimination, which is a mental process that registers, recognizes, and labels things, physical and mental feelings arise that are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Through these feelings, states of mind are then formed. These mental formations lead to intentional actions of body, speech, and mind, which together make up the factors that cause and condition or shape our karma and karmic propensities. From this analysis, we can see that the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, discrimination, mental formations, and consciousness, all function interdependently with one another. Additionally, all the aggregates interact with external phenomena as well. An independently self-existing I can't be found in any of the aggregates. This is the third essential point, ascertaining that the I is not one and the same as the aggregates. And here's the fourth point. We're a little over time. On the other hand, here's the fourth point, ascertaining if the I is different from the aggregates. On the other hand, if we try to search for the I or person apart from the aggregates, no I or person will be found that exists alone and separate from them. If we take away each of the aggregates, form, feeling, discrimination, and so on, one by one, and put them all together on one side of the room, there will be no I or person that remains alone and separated from the aggregates on the other side of the room. This is the fourth essential point, ascertaining that the I is not different from the aggregates. The 5 aggregates form the illusion of an inherently existing I and mind. The belief in an independent, self-existent I is unsubstantiated. It can't be found when searched for. Everything that we think of as I is a function of the aggregates that come together to make up the individual. The component parts of the aggregates work together so seamlessly that they create the sense of a single self or I. However, the Buddha taught that there is no self or I occupying the aggregates, just as in the meditation on the car from the previous session, where no car was actually found to occupy its parts. The name car is merely a label for the collection of parts that constitute it. The artificial assembly of the 5 aggregates forms the illusion of an individual I with an independent self-existence that thinks of the aggregates as mine, as if the I was the owner of them. My body, my ears, my mind, my consciousness, my feelings. Yet if we understand that the 5 aggregates taken together as a whole create the basis for designating the label I or person onto them in just the same way as the previous car meditation, It will help us see through the illusory appearance of an independently self-existing I. And that's that. And we're a little over time. But what I would suggest is, I will put this will be also, of course, the video will go up, but this meditation will be put on the study guide that is connected with the video. And I would suggest, I don't know, maybe I'll even do a recording.
I would not do
No.
a recording of that particular thing. What you need to do is a condensed recording of just the experience of the meditation without all the background information that you have to
Yeah.
include.
So, all right.
That won't be effective.
So what I would say is read this so that you understand the background information, so that you clearly,
Yeah.
that you're very familiar with that background information. Otherwise, you won't put it together in the same way.
Yeah, but the meditation itself
Yeah.
should be.
Okay.
without all that.
So we won't worry about that right now. But what I would say is go over this, a few times to become clear with it. And then practice this meditation and see if the real thing here is see if you can catch that idea of a self-existing I that has nothing to do with the body or anything else. And you do this by remembering or re-experiencing some very, very heightened moments, that were either very, very bad, very, very good. And you can sort of catch that. And once you catch that, then you try this meditation and see if you can sort of isolate what this I thing is that we're talking about. Okay, we'll do some quick closing prayers and then we're out of here. Definitely, let's do the one dedication prayer at the very bottom of the second page, which is the one on emptiness, and then the final dedication on the third page. And we'll just go ahead and do them in English. May the view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And the final dedication, bottom of page 3. In all my lives, may I not be separated from true lamas, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, fully perfecting the virtues of levels and paths. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara, and Vajradhara being the state of a primordial Buddha that we all have the potential to become. Hallelujah, amen. Be done. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kobita.
You're welcome, 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 welcome.
Bye,
Love, love,
everybody.
love.
Love, love, love.
I'll stop recording.